Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. This poem by Robert Frost is one of the most read poems of all time, particularly the last stanza. Today we'll study this poem. We will recite the poem, learn the rhyme scheme, structure of the poem, language, style, figures of speech used, imagery, and themes of the poem. I request you to keep a copy of the poem with you to have a better idea while we study the poem. Before we start, please remember that if the poem is short, one should read the whole poem several times before understanding it. Don't try to dissect the poem initially. Read the whole poem first for at least thrice. By doing this, after few readings or recitations, you will get the overall idea what the poem is about, its theme or themes, general atmosphere the poem creates, the span of the poem, the canvas. So let's recite the poem one more time. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Okay, so the poem has 4 stanzas. Each stanza contains 4 lines. So it's 16-line poem divided in 4 stanzas. Let's understand the rhyme scheme first. The rhyme scheme is the pattern of rhymes at the end of each line of a poem or song. It is usually referred to by using letters to indicate which line rhyme. Lines designated with the same letter all rhyme with each other. The rhyme scheme of this poem is A B A, B B C B, C C D C, D D D D. And each line is written in iambic tetrameter. Now, what is meter? The meter in the poetry means rhythmic structure of a poem or rhythmic structure of a line of a poem. That rhythmic structure is called meter. Each line of this poem is in iambic tetrameter. Okay. Now, what is iambic? An iamb is 2-syllable foot in poetry, which contains one unstressed syllable followed by stressed one. Now the question is, what is syllable? We can say that the syllables are small units of sound and are building blocks of a word. Let's understand it by examples. The word woods is monosyllabic word, means it has one small unit of sound, woods. The word village has 2 syllables, ledge. The same way, the word fantastic has 3 syllables, stick. Okay, I think now you understand what syllable is. So in poetry, when we talk about meter or the rhythmic structure of the poem, we count syllables and not words. So now you understand meter in poetry and syllable in word. Let's move forward. So each line in this poem is in iambic tetrameter. Tetra means 4. So iambic tetrameter means sets, 4 sets of iambic foot. फुट को हिंदी में हम आवर्तन कह सकते हैं. Iambic foot contains 2 syllables, as I mentioned earlier. First is unstressed and second is stressed. Unstressed and stressed makes a set of iambic. Iamb. Stress. Now what is stress? Stress is emphasis you put on the syllable while pronouncing that word. So समझिए आप, जो ये जो फुट है, आवर्तन है, मीटर है कविता में, जो रिदमिक पैटर्न है, वही किसी काव्य को, किसी गाने को गेय बनाता है, यानी कि गाने लायक बनाता है, सिंगेबल बनाता है. So if we look at this poem or try to sing this poem, you will be easily able to understand what rhythmic structure means, what unstressed and stressed syllable mean. Okay, this way. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. So this iambic tetrameter, this pattern and this rhyme scheme and rhythm of the poem makes it singable, उसे गेय बनाती. और ये किसी भी काव्य का, किसी भी अच्छी सबलाइम पोएट्री का एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भाग है, पार्ट है. Okay, now let's take the first line of the poem. Whose words these are, I think I know. The first line ends with the word no, and we will attribute letter A for the last word no, and all the line ending words that rhyme with the word no will be attributed letter A in the poem. And this way we will designate letters alphabetically accordingly. All the lines with same letter rhyme with each other. This way the rhyme scheme of the poem will be, as I mentioned, AABA, BBCB, CCDC, DDDD. So first, second, fourth, these 3 lines rhyme with each other and the letter is A. Third, fifth, sixth and 8th line rhyme with each other. We have attributed letter B. When you look at the poem, you can easily designate these letters and you can easily understand how the rhyme scheme is described in the poetry. Okay, so this is how the poem is structured. The purpose behind explaining all this is to convey that writing a sublime poetry is not an easy affair. And the beauty of this poem is that being structurally very strong and precise, it's very easy to understand and grasp. The language used is common. Words are easy. Okay, now let's understand the poem stanza by stanza. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. In the first stanza, the speaker or the poet says that he is in the woods which is filled up with snow. It means that it's winter and our speaker is going somewhere and stops here in the woods. He states that he is not sure, but he knows whose woods these are. And the owner of these woods lives in a village, maybe near some nearby village, and he is not aware that I am stopping here in the woods, which is filled up with snow. We observe the use of alliteration in the first stanza. What is alliteration? Alliteration means the use of same letter or sound at the beginning of the words that are close together. Okay. In the first stanza, "wa" sound is used several times. For example, whose, woods, village, will, watch. Again, the word woods and with. So, "wa" sound is repeated several times at the beginning of the beginning of the word. So, when the poet does this, it is called alliteration. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. In the second stanza, speaker's horse is bewildered and surprised that why his master has stopped here in the middle of woods where there is no farmhouse. The horse observes that there is a frozen lake there. It's the darkest evening of the year, so it is probably the month of December. Again, the poet used personification here, जिसको हिंदी में हम मानवीकरण कहते हैं. Personification means depiction of a thing or animal or an inanimate abstraction as a person or by human form. किसी वस्तु या प्राणी इवन फीलिंग्स को ह्यूमन बीइंग्स की तरह दर्शाना कविता में, उसे हम पर्सोनिफिकेशन या तो मानवीकरण कहते हैं. Here the horse is depicted as human who is thinking. So it's the use of personification. This stanza also uses imagery. Now, what is imagery? It creates a mental picture of the place where our speaker has stopped, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. So when you read these lines, you can imagine the scene where our speaker is standing, the forest and the frozen lake and woods and dark and evening. So this creates a mental picture in your mind, and when the poet does this, it is called imagery. The poet uses some images to create a mental picture in your mind. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. Personification continues in this stanza. He gives his harness bells a shake. Here pronoun he is used for the horse. The horse makes a gesture of shaking his harness bells and asks the master if there is some mistake, we stopped here. In the last two lines of this stanza, the poet tells us that it was quiet environment. The only sounds was the sound of easy wind and downy flake. चल रही हवा सीवियर नहीं है, शांत है, ईजी है, और एनवायरनमेंट इतना शांत है कि थोड़ी थोड़ी हो रही स्नोफॉल की आवाज़ सुनाई दे रही है. फ्लेक का मतलब है वो छोटे छोटे आइस के पार्टिकल्स जो स्नोफॉल में ज़मीन पे गिरते हैं. डाउनी फ्लेक मीन्स हल्के छोटे आइस पार्टिकल्स, like feather of a bird. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Fourth stanza. If you observe that there is a comma after the word lovely in the first line of this stanza, that comma was added afterwards, after the poem was written by the editors, obviously, and it modifies the meaning. If we remove comma, the word lovely becomes adverb of the word dark. But here, the meaning is that woods are lovely and dark and deep. So, in spite of being dark and deep, the woods are lovely. It attracts the poet, it attracts the speaker to stay there for a while. But he says that though the woods are lovely and dark and deep, he has promises to keep. Because he has to finish the work and his journey before he sleeps. Sleep here means death. It emphasizes on the importance of social obligations. The social obligations one has to meet. जीवन के इस लंबे सफ़र में बहुत काम है जो हमें मरने से पहले पूरे करने हैं. We have many promises to keep. तो जीवन के इस सफ़र में कई ऐसे मकाम आएंगे जहां हम रुकना चाहते हैं कि समय थम जाए और हम उसी मकाम पे ठहर जाएं. लेकिन फिर हमें रियलाइज़ होता है कि रुकना सही नहीं है. अपनों के लिए, हम जिसे चाहते हैं, जिनकी फिक्र करते हैं, उनके लिए हमें ये जीवन यात्रा बिना रुके शुरू रखनी है ना. हमें आखिरी मंजिल यानी कि मृत्यु से पहले कई और मंजिलें पानी हैं. माइल्स टू गो बिफोर आई स्लीप एंड माइल्स टू गो बिफोर आई स्लीप. और यहीं इस पोएम की मेजर थीम्स में से एक है, डिज़ायर वर्सेस ऑब्लिगेशन, इच्छा वर्सेस बाध्यता. वी कैन ऑल्सो लुक एट द हॉर्स एज इंटेलेक्ट और बुद्धि और बाध्यता, एंड स्पीकर एज समवन हु डिजायर्स. हम रुकना चाहते हैं थोड़ी देर, नेचर को, प्रकृति को सुनना चाहते हैं, ईजी विंड एंड डाउनी फ्लेक. लेकिन बुद्धि रूपी घोड़ा हमें अपने कर्तव्य, अपनी बाध्यताओं को याद दिलाता रहता है. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. ना? दूसरी मेजर थीम है नेचर वर्सेस ह्यूमन. In many of Frost's poems, nature is depicted beautifully, untouched, organic, non-intruded, far from humans, that nature. And then the poet introduces a human element or man-made element in the poem, which is in a way disturbs the nature. Lovely, dark and deep nature is disturbed by burden of obligations in human. The outside nature is peaceful, lovely, beautiful, and the speaker's being or speaker's self wants to be there. But his obligation, burden of being human prevents the peace and beauty to enter his mind. So, बाध्यता, डिज़ायर वर्सेस बाध्यता यानी कि डिज़ायर वर्सेस ऑब्लिगेशन और ह्यूमन वर्सेस नेचर आर टू मेजर थीम्स ऑफ दिस पोएम. My name is Smith Haryani. This is my channel. If you like these videos, please subscribe, press the bell icon, and don't forget to like the video. Thank you very much.